For those of you who might be here for the first time, welcome for your first session. And for those of you who are returning, we are so glad you could come back. Now, I'd like to remind you before we start the program, if you could please turn your mobile phones off or on silent so that it doesn't interrupt the AV team and the filming. And just a little note for the filming as well. If you need to come in and out, please keep it to a minimum. And when you do, could you be like as quiet as you can be? Because any movement in the floor moves the cameras, and the people online are complaining that, well, they're not complaining. They just would prefer that the camera wasn't moving so much. So if you could help us with that, that would be wonderful. We're so thankful to have Hans with us again, sharing the message that he has. And I particularly love the message of health, and I'm hoping that all of you do, and I'm sure you must because you're here. So just to remind you again, the bathrooms, as you go out the door to the left, it's in the middle of the quadrangle for the ladies, and the gentleman is along the back of the church. So if you need anything during the program, I'll be in the back in the foyer. You could come and ask me. But we thank you again for coming. And we look forward to what Dr. Hans Diehl has to say. We have a program, I must remember. This one will finish at 4 o'clock. And then the next program is at 4:30 till 5:30. And after that, we have Lily, who's going to give us an amazing concert. We heard some beautiful playing from her this morning. And if you haven't told anybody about it, get on your phones before you put them on silent. Tell some friends to come along and at least hear the concert in the evening. Thank you very much.
Switched on there? Yes, now I am. Good afternoon. Can I just ask for a show of hands for people who were not here this morning? Welcome. We'd like to welcome each of you here to our program this afternoon at Adelaide Central Church. Is that the official name of the church? Thank you, because that's the name I've been mentally calling it. Adelaide City Church. Thank you. Well, this afternoon, I'd like to introduce Dr. Hans Diehl to you. Dr. Hans Diehl is a passionate man. And it's his passion that has actually helped so many people experience health, healing, and hope. And this afternoon, as you listen to Dr. Diehl actually talk about his particular chosen topic, I'd like for you to just reflect for a moment on what your passion is in life. You will hear by the way he talks how passionate he is about his subject matter and how for him it is his life. And I'd like to encourage each of you to reflect on your lives. What is your passion? And are you contributing to the health and wellness of those around you with your passion, whatever it is and wherever it lies in life? Hans, welcome again to Adelaide City Church. It's a pleasure to have you here.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide. The average Canadian will spend their last 10 years in sickness. Change your future at makehealthlast.ca.
Question as we turn the lights on. What did you learn from that 1-minute clip? Your choices can change your life, your destiny. What was the lesson you picked up?
That everything that you put into your body,
It didn't talk about foods.
no, but
It's about quality of life.
yeah,
It talked about choices. Did it?
yeah,
Let me tell you what I pick up.
probably soaked up.
Let me tell you what I pick up on it. My lesson is, don't be a Canadian. Except we are all living like Canadians. We are Westerners, and the Western lifestyle is spreading around the world. It's becoming now a global lifestyle. I wrote a major chapter in a very important book that was entitled Western Diseases, Their Emergence and Reversibility. In those days, this was in the 1990s, we still talked about Western diseases, heart disease, hypertension, arthritis, depression, obesity, Western diseases, because they're mostly found in Western society. Now, they're global diseases because we have exported this Western lifestyle that is associated with these Western diseases to the rest of the world. So I want to talk to you a little bit this afternoon on fork and knife, weapons of mass destruction. I want to talk to you today about fork and knife, weapons of mass destruction, or are they instruments of health, hope, and healing? And here's some dietary advice. Here is something that comes from the top, a word of wisdom to consider. This lady wrote years ago, there are few who realize, as they should, how much the habits of diet. Remember, it doesn't say how much a little piece of chocolate. She talks about the habits of diet, what we do from day to day, how the habits of diet have to do with their health, their character. I mean, dietary habits have something to do with character, their usefulness in this world, and their eternal destiny. I mean, my dietary habits, the choices I make about how I use fork and knife, may have something to do with eternal destiny. And she said, the appetite should always be in subjection to the moral and intellectual powers. Oh, I love this food. I won't eat this other stuff. It might be good for me, but I like this food. Folks, here it is. The appetite should always be in subjection to the moral and intellectual powers. The body should be the servant of the mind. The mind should not be the servant of the body. Something to think about, isn't it? And then, this was 100 years ago, and then Susan Blum, a physician, writes recently, afflicted, troubled by chronic disease, then changing the food you eat is the single most powerful lifestyle change you can make to restore your health. You know what that means? Prescription for health. How do you use your fork and knife? That's the issue. That's what we need to think about. That has to enter our intellectual awareness. We need to think about that and make some smart decisions, not based on preference, not based on appetite, but based on what do I really want to accomplish in life? What is my passion about life? That's what Mrs. Stevenson just addressed here. What's your passion in life? Do you want to be around? Do you want to see the grandchildren growing up? Do you want to see the grandchildren becoming, especially endowed with a special diploma, college, university? Do you want to see the grandkids getting married? Or maybe you don't care. It doesn't matter. What do you really want out of life? You want to be vital? You want to have energy? Do you want to be useful? Do you want to plant some flowers along the road of life for others to enjoy? The whole purpose of the health message is to have clear minds. In our CHIP program, people talk to us all the time. After about 2 or 3 weeks, they talk about the fog is lifting. The mental fog is lifting. I can think clearer, and I'm very, very frustrated every time I hear this because I have no fog meter. I want to measure this. Can you really change the fog? Can you really change the clarity of the mind? I want to talk to some psychologists and see what we can do to measure this because it's a very consistent finding in our CHIP program. I can think clearer. The mind fog is lifting. Now, I want to take you on a little journey this afternoon. I take you to Japan. 1952, Japan. The University of Tokyo, the medical school, is writing to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore in the United States. And they said, we have no heart disease here in Japan. We cannot show medical students what kills every second American. Can you sell us some coronary arteries, arteries from the heart that you have? Of course, the people die first, and then you take it out. And can you ship us some coronary arteries so we can look inside the arteries and see how the arteries have been building up with fat, cholesterol, and calcium? And the university said, well, we have never had a request like that before. Think about that. It was impossible to find coronary artery disease in Japan in 1952. They just didn't have this disease. And at that time, it killed every second American. Because Americans had gone through depression, and they had a special phrase that they coined then, a chicken in every pot. We're going to recover. A chicken in every pot. We're going to be doing it. America first. And then when they came out of the war, the soldiers, by and large, all had become smokers. That was part of the package. And heart disease was soaring. Every second death was due in Canada and in America to cardiovascular disease, heart disease, and stroke. In general, chronic diseases were rare in population on traditional plant-based diet. But in Japan, westernization took place, and 30 years later, Japan had become self-sufficient. They no longer needed to buy coronary arteries from Johns Hopkins University. They built their own coronary artery disease now. And today in Japan, every second, the number 2 cause of death in Japan now is heart disease. You eat like a Westerner, you live like a Westerner, you die like a Westerner. Japan. Here, prior to 1960, only 1% of adults over 40 years of age had diabetes. Today, it's more than 15%, which means that diabetes has increased by 15 times. The rates have increased by 15 times. And people say, well, that cannot be a genetic disease then, because genes don't change in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Genes take about 300 years to change before you see a new disease emerging. This is not a disease of genetics. Diabetes, regardless of what the popular opinion is not a disease of genetics, by and large. It has to do with the environment, because genes don't change that fast. But you can change the environment in 5, 10 years, and within 10 to 15 years, you can produce obesity and diabetes and certain heart disease in populations that never had them before. That's what we do as epidemiologists. We study the epidemics of these diseases, and we begin to realize it wasn't there then, 15, 20 years later, it's there. Why? What happened? What changed? Genes? No. Environment. What happened in the environment? That's what we're going to talk about. Here you see what happened in Japan. In Japan, the consumption of rice dramatically dropped because it was replaced by fatty, oily, greasy foods, especially meats. Meats are usually very high in fat. When people talk about meats, they always think that it's high in protein. Well, we need to think this. We need to change this. When you think about meat, always think in terms of it's high in fat. When you have a sirloin steak, that's 75% fat. Protein is only 25%. But somehow they have marketed this product very, very wisely, giving protein a superiority over other foods. As a matter of fact, we should be very careful because the abundance of protein in our diet, especially animal protein, the evidence is so clear that it is directly associated with certain kidney diseases and promotion of cancers. Americans, for instance, consume twice the amount of protein that the government agencies recommend. We should not be worrying about getting enough. We should worry about getting too much protein. So that's my first point I want to make here. Number two, in Japan, you see what happened here as the fat consumption increased. You also see the dramatic increase in obesity. From 1960 to 2000, a significant increase in obesity, 3%, 5 times more obesity in Japan within 40 years. And please note the yellow line, this is representing diabetes type 2. Again, you see there's a parallel line. The higher the increase in obesity, the higher the increase in diabetes. They're cousins. Diabetes is usually preceded by obesity. When I see a person that is obese, I mean pretty heavy, and they're 40, 50 years of age, I usually suspect that that person might either be a pre-diabetic on his, her way to diabetes, or is already a full-blown diabetic. Overweight is a very weighty issue. Every pound counts. Every half a kilo of excess weight shaves off 1 month of life. A person's 25 kgs overweight, you can figure that out. It's 50 months of life. That's 4 years that you give up on your life expectancy. Plus you have to worry about all these diseases that are associated with an excess amount of weight. Will you take it seriously to have those extra pounds? Oh, well, I'm just from Samoa, and we can't help it. We are just large-boned, and we're just this way, and we have large feet, and, you know. Well, I just came back from spending some time with some of our friends. These are people that are leaders in the Latter-day Saints Church. And I gave a presentation there to some of the leadership in Brisbane, and some of the members were telling me, oh, this afternoon, the kids had a big competition here in the church. They had a competition who can eat the most ice cream and the most junk food. And my boy, he won the competition. He had the most ice cream that he devoured in half an hour. Folks, I mean, this is not what we need to do. But then they come to me and say, can you help us with health? And this was a Samoan sport, they were telling me. This is what the Polynesian people do. I mean, they're here and they find all these interesting, tempting and brilliant tasting and addictive foods, and they make a competition out of it. Sad, isn't it? Now I want to take you to Lithuania. You know where that is. It's close to Russia, south of Finland, small country. It was always part of the Western world. They were always a democratic country. And then after the war, the Soviet Union took over, and it became a satellite country for the Soviet Union. And when the wall came down in 1989 in Berlin, the Soviet Union collapsed, and the people rose up. They rose up in many, many countries there, including Lithuania, and they kicked out the Russians. And they brought in the West. What happened? Democracy returned, free market economy, all good, free elections, all good, but you also brought in Western values, like pornography and Western foods, like the hot dog became a favorite in Lithuania, came in 6 different flavors. In addition to this, this is what I saw in Lithuania. This is what I saw in gasoline stations. And people were telling me, we don't make our money pumping gas. No. Our money comes, our profits are made from selling these Western foods that have come in like a tsunami. I mean, even I found Monster drinks. This is 6 years ago. They already had Monster drinks in Lithuania. High caffeinated drinks, high sugar. And over the next 20 years, you see a doubling in heart disease deaths in Lithuania. So much so that now 59% of all the deaths in Lithuania are related to cardiovascular disease. In America, we have about 29 to 30%. This is twice the number. Please note, the lifespan gap. In Spain, people live on the average 83 years. In Lithuania, 74. The people live 9 years longer in Spain than in Lithuania. In addition to this, Lithuania now has the highest cardiovascular death rate in Europe. Bring in the West, bring in the diseases. And so I had a very good relationship with the Lithuanian leadership and some of the governmental people, and they're now beginning to make some changes. They recognized some 5 years ago when I talked with some of the government people, I said, sir, we don't have the money. We cannot spend $150,000 for a bypass. No, we have heart disease. Every second person that dies is from heart disease or stroke. We don't have time. We don't have money to do repair work. We cannot do bypasses. We cannot do stents. We don't have the money. What can we do? I said, you have to prevent it, number one. Number two, you have to reverse the disease, and you can do it through a lifestyle medicine approach. That means you have to change your diet, and you have to change the doctors. So I went to the medical school and said, would you be interested in looking at lifestyle medicine? We provide some instruction in how to use foods therapeutically. We are recommending more fruits and more vegetables, more whole grains, and more legumes. Would you be interested in becoming part of this new movement in Lithuania? The dean said to me, sir, I'm sorry, but this doesn't fit into our economic model for medicine. I mean, our doctors have to make a living. We don't understand. Why? You want to promote health? Yeah. So I talked to the president of the university, and he was at one time one of the World Health Organization directors in Geneva. And of course, he was very open to the ideas. And he said, we need to go to the School of Public Health. They're interested in this, I'm sure. And so we launched a program to teach physicians in the School of Public Health to add 1 more year or something like this to bring more nutritional and understanding, psychology and communication skills, and how to deal with people in groups. And here you see, this was the 5th annual Lifestyle Medicine Conference just a few months ago, how to go beyond managing the symptoms with medications and medical interventions. How we need to go from managing symptoms to reversing and curing chronic disease, and you cannot do it unless you involve the patient, because only the patient can make the lifestyle changes, and the lifestyle changes will change the causes of disease and will provide the therapy of turning it around. I talked about that last night. You have to become the chairman of the board of your own health. You have to become intelligent, and you have to become empowered. And you cannot do it by yourself very easily, because the powers are against you. The culture is pushing you in a different direction. So we need to develop a subculture, a healthy culture, a smaller culture. And that's where I think the Adventist Church could make a major contribution, because we basically have the history in this field all wrapped up at one time. We have the concepts. We have the instruction. We have the guidance on what we should do. We have the documentation that Adventists live longer, 7 to 14 years. But many Adventists have drifted away, and we no longer do it. Just like our Mormon friends, they come to me and they say, the CHIP program, that's our program. That's what our prophet told us. Our prophet told us 40 years before your prophet told you, stay away from meats, stay away from alcohol, stay away from smoking, stay away from caffeine, eat more grains, eat more beans, eat more fruits and vegetables. They came to me and they said, it's in our, what they call the word of wisdom. Our prophet codified, this is what we as Mormons should do. And then they said, but we drifted away. Oh, we don't use coffee. Yeah, but everything else we do. Oh, we don't smoke, but everything else we do. And you have the answer. In the CHIP program, you have 18+1 lectures. They are wonderful. You actually have used our concepts, haven't you? I said, no, we haven't. We had a lady by the name of Ellen G. White that lived about 30-some years with her first vision beyond what Joseph Smith apparently, said he saw. Could it be that we have become so complacent as church members that we think we're okay, we live longer than anybody else, we're doing okay, pass on the cheese, pass on the cheeseburger, pass on the hamburgers. It's just becoming part of our culture. We got the coffee machines going, many homes. Somehow we are in danger of drifting away and becoming part of the secularized society. Am I saying that too harshly? If we would do a survey here in Australia, and we would ask the question, how many of you think you are pure vegetarians? What do you think the answer would be? Anybody want to guess? 1%? In America, in Canada, it's 9% of the Adventists are pure vegetarians. About 30% of the Adventists are lacto-ovo vegetarians. 10% more are fish-eating vegetarians. And 50% of the people, of the adults in America are meat-eating people. What do you think would be here in Australia? And we're recognizing with some concern the fact that our younger generation in North America is drifting more and more away from vegetarianism. The older folks are getting more and more into it because they want to be around, because they recognize, hey, if you move in that direction, you live longer. And you can do something about your high blood pressure, you can do something about your diabetes. Hey, this is a good way to go, and I save money on my food bill. But the young people, they're immortal. I'm fine. I just enjoy it, pass it along. So, I showed you something about Japan. I showed you something about Lithuania. I want to show you something about Nauru. How many of you have heard of Nauru? Okay? You should all have heard about Nauru. After all, this has become the dumping ground of undesirable people for the Australian government. People come here on their boats. They're not supposed to come here, and you don't know what to do with these people. You ship them to Nauru, a small speck of an island in the South Pacific. This is what it looked like in 1958. Nauru, small island, 11 square miles, little paradise. That's the way it was. And then, 1968, something was discovered. It's called guano. Guano are the droppings of birds. And these bird droppings had accumulated in Nauru to unusual heights. I mean, the country was basically, and they discovered that the phosphate in this guano was very, very valuable. And so they brought in industrial mine stripping, strip mining corporations, and they strip mined the land, and they took all the guano out, they took all the phosphate out, and the people in Nauru became the second richest people in the world. Actually, you can see the income there for these 11,000 people was $2.5 billion, so that every person was receiving, on the average, $250,000 US dollars. That's more like almost 400,000 Australian dollars. These people became rich overnight because of those birds. And guess what they did with the money? What do you think they did? First of all, they listened to the wrong counselors, and so they built the Bank of Nauru here in Australia. Furthermore, they brought in Western foods. They brought in Western chefs, and they began to enjoy the foods that they had never seen before. They used to eat roots. Now they're eating Oreos and M&Ms and cakes and pies and potato chips. These became the foods that can stay on the shelf for 91 years. They won't turn bad. And they didn't know that if you eat these foods, you as a person won't stay on the shelf that long. And here you see what happened. This is all within 10, 20 years. New diseases erupt. Obesity, 71% of the population. Diabetes, 42% of the population. And today, Nauru is a place that is stripped of its beauty. It has become a very undesirable place to live. Then I want to take you to Saudi Arabia. Here you see people standing in front of, queuing up in front of McDonald's. I mean, these women, they've become some of the largest women in the world. Actually, I think it's a good idea to dress in black outfits when you're large. It covers up many sins, doesn't it? All they have is they have a couple of openings in these black dresses for two eyes, and then somehow, I don't know how they get the food into the gullet. They find a way to do this, and they begin to look this part, including their children. It's absolutely shocking what has happened. I talked to some of the government people. I was there about 4 years ago. We did a lifestyle medicine seminar there, and they were telling me that the kings of old used to live 79, 85, 89 years of age, and now the kings have bypass surgery at 49 with heart disease. Something has happened. You live like the West, you die like the West. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Fork and knife, weapons of mass destruction. This is America now. You see about every third death is due to cardiovascular disease, every fourth death is due to cancer, and then you add diabetes to it, and you have 2/3 of all the deaths are related to these modern killer diseases. These are called chronic diseases. Once you have them forever unless you make lifestyle changes, because they're lifestyle related. Now, what people oftentimes don't realize is that heart disease in America or in Australia is a fairly new disease. Here you see what happens in 1928. Famous physician Sir William Osler wrote a major textbook, 1928, and he said when it comes to heart disease, you can expect 1 heart attack a year in average hospital in average sized town. How many heart attacks a year? 1 a year per town. Things have changed. Now we have 3,000 heart attacks a day, making cardiovascular disease responsible for every third death. This is not a disease that we've always had. And then you look at this one here. Now, if I would ask you to close your eyes, we're all blind, I would just ask this gentleman there with the glasses and the nice beard, I would ask you, would you please tell us exactly what you see there so that all of us who are blind could really understand this? Don't interpret this, just tell us what you see. Sir, I see 3 chairs. One chair represents the year 1900. Another chair represents the year 1930. A third chair represents the year 1970. And I also noticed that the size, the width of the chair that you sit on apparently has a number on it. It has gone from 43 centimeters in 1900 to 44 centimeters in 1930 to 45 centimeters in 1970. That means it didn't change. It didn't change. Minimal change. But please note what happened today. This is 61 centimeter. I put it in inches to just arrest your attention on it. We've gone from 43 to 61 inches since 1975, 1980. Something happened. It was a dietary revolution that was sparked in America, where we took foods and we turned them into industrialized products. We no longer eat potatoes, we eat potato chips. We no longer drink water, we drink soda pop. We no longer eat beans, we eat burgers. We no longer eat, give me another example. Can't you think of some examples? Apples, we turn it into apple juice, right? Or apple pies, right? And when you have this kind of a food supply that is readily available, and we're being sold on the idea, well, we're all working hard, we have no longer time, we have to have convenience foods, we cannot spend 20 minutes in cooking a meal. That's what it takes. If you do it right and if you follow the CHIP program and the tools that we use there. It takes you 20 minutes to stay in line at McDonald's. Drive over there, then you sit around there for 5-10 minutes, you wait for this thing to come down, and then a mechanical arm comes out, and it gives you some kind of a bag, and you sit there, and you wolf it down. You no longer pray. There's no need for praying, right? Because why do you want to... Maybe you should ask for forgiveness when you eat this stuff. God didn't make it. And as he sees you devouring this food, he probably has a tear running down his cheek. I made the food for you. Why do you settle for this? And so when you then have a society that's suffering with obesity, I mean, these are very large people, then you have to recognize the likelihood of diabetes is 7 times higher, the likelihood of high blood pressure is 6 times higher, heart disease is 5 times more common in overweight people, arthritis, asthma, sleep apnea, all dramatically increased when you carry extra weight. And please note, cancer of the breast, the prostate, colon, and cervix are all enhanced by excess weight. And so here you see the change in diabetes. 1980, something happened. Remember, this is when the fast food revolution began. We shifted from slow food to fast food. We shifted from eating at home to eating out. We shifted from eating whole food as it comes in nature to eating engineered foods. And everything changed. These foods were high in nutrition and low in calories. These foods are low in nutrition and high in calories. These foods have nuances of different tastes. These foods are all very tasty. It's difficult to resist. They're high sugar, high salt, high taste. Brilliant. Manufactured to addict you. Diabetes, 1980. You see a sudden swerving up of the slope. Diabetes rates increased by 300% in 30 years. I said to you earlier, it takes how many years to change the genes in a society to increase disease? How many years? 300. This is 30 years. This is not genetics. This has to do with what we do, what changed in the environment. Beyond this, we have a concept of epigenetics, which can actually suppress the expression of genes that may be coding for cancer. You can change these things in most cases. Breast cancer, 1 in 20 women, 1960, now it's 1 in 7 women developing breast cancer. Something is happening, and something did happen. And then you come to heart disease. When it comes to heart disease, we really are concerned about the coronary arteries that are sitting on top, like a crown sits on top of the head. These are the crowning vessels, and their purpose is to deliver oxygenated blood with nutrients to the heart muscle so that heart muscle the size of a fist can beat again and again for 80, 90, 100, 110 years. You don't have to stop the heart, do a loop job, change the oil. You don't have to do anything. Just treat it with respect, and it will serve you again and again and again. But that's not what happens in society around the world now, because this is a cross-section of a coronary artery, as you here see. The artery wall is out here, but it's filled in now with cholesterol and certain fats and calcium and dead cells, and it creates a narrowing of the original intraluminal space. See the opening here? It's no longer 100% wide open, it might be about 35%. And all it takes now is a blood clot that settles in this narrowed opening, and when the blood clot settles there, it interrupts the blood flow with oxygen to the heart muscle. and the heart muscle dies because of oxygen deficits. The heart muscle turns blue. It's dying from asphyxiation. That's what a heart attack is. Let me show you what I mean. Slides. Lights off.
I first woke up, so to speak, when I was working on the anesthesia service, learning how to put people to sleep. And I was seeing my patients for the next day's surgery for coronary artery bypass surgery in order to bypass clogged arteries in their heart. Because it was late at night, I drew the man's blood test, and when I took the blood to the laboratory and had it processed, I couldn't believe my eyes. Now, normally, this liquid layer floating on top of the blood clot is quite transparent. It's a yellow, but quite clear. You can see right through it. The blood in this patient's tube, however, was anything but clear. The serum floating on his clot was thick and greasy white. It looked like glue. In fact, it stuck to the sides of the blood tube when I shook the tube. I went back to the patient. I said, Mr. Phillips, did you eat before you came to the hospital tonight? He said, yes. I said, what did you have? He said, I had a cheeseburger and a milkshake. And when he said that, I realized that what I was looking at in his tube was all the fat in the beef burger, all the butter fat in the cheese, and the butter fat in the ice cream and in the milkshake. And all this fat had oozed out into his blood and actually turned his blood fatty. Well, 30, 40, 50 years of keeping your blood very fatty creates changes in the blood vessels that are very dangerous.
Over the years, arteries can become clogged with fatty material. Then a blood clot can form, blocking the blood flow completely. If the artery leads to the heart, the lack of oxygen can cause heart muscle to die. That's a heart attack. If the clogged artery leads to the brain, the patient has a stroke.
The next morning, we took Mr. Phillips to the operating room, and I put him to sleep, and the surgeon opened up his chest. And from these arteries, he began pulling out yellow, greasy deposits of fatty material called atherosclerosis.
You're going to talk to your neighbor and tell your neighbor what you saw. Take 2 minutes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what you saw here today, just now, was a basic underlying disease process for most circulation-related chronic diseases. Let me help you to understand this. We're born with clean arteries. By the time we're 20 years of age, we have 20% narrowing. By the time we're 40 years of age, we have 40, 50, 60% narrowing. By the time we're 70 years of age, we may have 70, 80, 90% narrowing. This is a progressive disease where you have a building up of cholesterol, fats, and calcium that stiffens the artery. You don't have any sign of heart disease until you have about 70% narrowing. And then if you're lucky, you have some angina pain. I say you're lucky because it means it tells you something is happening, you're narrowing the arteries, do something about it because a heart attack is imminent, can be imminent. Please remember, 40% of heart disease, in 40% of the cases, the first sign of heart disease is sudden death. There's not much you can do after that. That's why we beg people, come into the CHIP program, do something about it now. Yeah, you're 40, 50 years of age. You're guaranteed to have 40, 50, 60% narrowing of some of these coronary arteries. Do something about it now and don't push your luck. Oh, I am okay, I'm okay. Men are always defying. I mean, they're in denial all the time. No, I have to watch the rugby game. I have to watch the cricket. No, you go to this program. Folks, we need to do it as families. Bring the kids in too. It has to be a social approach to this. What's really disturbing to me is this disease is not only affecting the coronary arteries. Atherosclerosis affects all the major arteries in the body. It affects the cerebral arteries, the arteries that bring blood and nutrients and oxygen to the brain, to the forebrain, to the frontal lobe, yeah. The anatomical site of spirituality. And when this supply of nutrient is diminished, do you see that it can have a possible effect on the spiritual vibrancy of a person? When it affects the memory banks of the brain, do you see how it could affect recall, memory loss, senility contributing to it? Do you see that when these arteries become affected and they're bringing oxygenated blood to the back of your eye, that you could develop macular degeneration, vision loss, or hearing loss? They're all interrelated, related to a diminishment, the suboptimal use of nutrients that don't come in because of the narrowing of the arteries. Then you have the coronary arteries, you have the renal arteries, the kidney vessels. They're again directly associated with hypertension. And then in men, you have to worry about erectile dysfunction. I mean, we find this increasingly so in men under 70 years of age. I mean, age has its role to play too, but I mean, this shouldn't happen in 55-year-old men. Oh, I know there could be some hormonal problems, there could be some marital relationships, there could be some neurological problems that can all happen, but probably 70% of erectile dysfunction or impotence is related to this problem called atherosclerosis, affecting every vessel in the body. These are the larger vessels. Would you have any idea how many... Don't look away. Any idea how many kilometers of blood vessels the human body has? Any idea how many kilometers of blood vessels the human body has? Any idea of how many kilometers of blood vessels the human body has? You must be a med tech or something, or maybe you're a health educator. Yeah, he's absolutely right. The body has about 100,000, thank you, about 100,000 kilometers of blood vessels, and most of the capillaries, the small vessels, are 1/10 in thickness of your hair. Wonderfully and fearfully made. First-class design. You know how many red blood cells you have in the tip of a felt pen? That's 1 cubic millimeter. 5 million red blood cells. They carry the oxygen. 5 million in a small space like this. And these red blood cells are so small that they barely get through these small capillaries. Wonderfully and fearfully made. Why do you want to put second-class food into a first-class designed body? That was a pretty weak amen. I thought that would be a... And you see, interesting enough, these are then many diseases with different names, many different areas, and many different doctors, many different specialists. Every specialist takes care of one of these diseases, and everybody is doing very well in making a living. And we seemingly overlook the fact that this is one basic disease. It's called atherosclerosis, inflammatory processes, hardening and narrowing of the arteries. And once you take care of some of these diseases, some of these sites, you will take care of most of them. That's why it was so astounding. We started our program calling it the Coronary Health Improvement Program. And we noticed that the diabetics were doing so well, and the people with arthritis were improving. They could open up their lids now. And we said, what's going on? We're treating these people not for arthritis, we're treating them for heart disease. And we began to understand they're all interrelated, because when you make the dietary change and you exercise and you think clearly and you have a positive attitude, you affect all of these diseases. That's the beauty. That's exactly opposite of what medication does. Medication, when you have high blood pressure medication, that takes just care of high blood pressure, if that. And after a while, you take 3 medications and 4 medications and 5 medications, and you end up with many medications. And you have side effects. You worry about diabetes. You worry about impotence and all these kind of things. That side effects of the hypertensive medication. With the dietary approach, the only positive side effects, you're losing weight. People compliment you, wow, you're looking so good. You have a spring in your feet. These are the side effects that we want. And they come by making some simple dietary changes and moving back to the Creator's design. Amen? You're getting better. Now think about that, really. I mean, the ultimate design and the ultimate food that comes out of His hands, simply prepared without all the sugar and salt and the fats and grease and all these kind of things, prepared in meals that are simple, 20 minutes, and you're done. I'm at the airport. I'm landing about 20 minutes away from where Loma Linda is, and I meet this gentleman, and he's going to see the university, and we become sort of acquainted, and I call up my wife. I said, honey, yeah, oh yeah. It's 12 o'clock, the plane is just landing now. I said, honey, I met this gentleman here. He's a professor, and he's visiting Loma Linda. Is there a way that you could, yes, I got the message, dear. I know. We've been married for 50 years. We understand what's coming. I'll have the meal ready in 20 minutes, because it takes 20 minutes to drive to our home. Where did we get the idea that it would take all day to prepare a good meal? You would have a simple meal. It shouldn't take more than 15, 20 minutes. Otherwise, you overdo it. And that's what we try to teach in CHIP. In CHIP, we try to teach you simple recipes. I started a cookbook that then later on was replaced. Well, they never used it, I think, because the Sanitarium developed their own cookbook for the Australian market. But for the Australian market, for the American market, the cookbook that we have, The Optimal Diet, beautiful, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you're done. And it's tasty. We had teenagers check the foods out. When teenagers love the food, you know it's okay. So here are some of these diseases, like myocardial infarction, angina, stroke, senility, hearing loss, visual loss, hypertension, gangrene, impotence, claudication, degenerative disease. They're all interrelated with the circulatory system. And there was a lady that many, many years ago, more than 100 years ago, more than 150 years ago, talked about the idea that perfect health depends on perfect circulation. How did she know this? I mean, this is exactly what we're talking about here. She had no idea. Nobody knew anything about cholesterol. Nobody knew anything about saturated and unsaturated fat. Nobody knew about fiber in the diet. How did she know these things? Entrusted to us as a sacred gift to enlighten the world and be a healthy-looking congregation. By the way, I enjoyed most of the display that you had on the food today. Almost exclusively everything. It was excellent. And then somebody said, oh, we just did that because you were coming. No. I'm sure that's not true. I know that you're doing this every week, and I know it'll be the same next week, wouldn't it? It needs to become a habit, remember? So people began to wonder about the disease. In the 1940s and 1950s, and they began a large study called the Framingham Study, and they took a whole town, and they followed these people for 2, 3, 4 generations now, and they found out that the people that had the highest amount of cholesterol, the highest blood pressure, and had the most smoking, these people were at the highest level of developing coronary artery disease, atherosclerosis, narrowing the arteries. If I ask you what are the 3 main factors that drive this disease, you would tell me what? Cholesterol? High blood pressure? Folks, this is a visual test. You failed miserably. I mean, can you read this? What is it? The 3 major factors for atherosclerosis is cholesterol, blood pressure, and you all pulled your glasses out now, right? No, but then you also have to worry about diabetes because diabetes accelerates atherosclerosis, affecting the whole body. That's why diabetes is the plague of the 21st century. It takes your body down one organ at a time, from the top to the eyes, to the ears, to the heart, to the kidneys, everywhere. In Fiji, they were telling me the patients come into the hospital with 2 legs. They leave the hospital with 1 or none. Diabetes, amputations. Folks, they're unnecessary. All we have to do is make some changes. And you can change the blood sugar within 4 to 5 days. And your physician has to reduce the medication within 4 to 5 days. But somehow we all have this idea of a silver bullet. If I just get the best doctor with the best hospital, with the best latest medication, I'll be okay. True when it comes to infectious diseases. When it comes to these chronic diseases, we have very little to offer you to turn these diseases off. Right or wrong? Yeah. But people don't know this. Because we are so successful medically in turning off infectious diseases and inflammation, with 10 days of antibiotics, it's wiped out, and therefore you think the same thing is true for heart disease and diabetes and other of these chronic diseases. And it's not true. The chronic diseases relate to how people choose to live. These are the causes that promote these diseases. Do you smoke? Are you overweight? Are you on a diet that's a typical American, Australasian diet? Are you taking a lot of fat in? Are you taking a lot of grease in? Are you taking a lot of salt in? Are you really a sugaraholic? You know, these are the kind of questions. Are you exercising? Are you treating your spouse well? Are you letting go of your bitterness towards that divorced louse of a man that you used to have? Are you still bitter about what this uncle did to you as a young girl? Yeah, it's painful. We carry these things with us for years and decades, and it blunts the activity of the body to function well. We need to find relief from these kind of past experiences. We have to release them. We need to seek out some professional counsel, a Christian psychologist, a counselor. We need to do something about these things. Don't carry the burden with you for the rest of your life. It loads you down. Be free. So we're looking always for the magic, high-tech medical answer. So if you have heart disease, you figure, well, if I get a bypass. I met a gentleman here this morning. He said, well, I had a bypass 4 months ago. I said, my goodness, you've gone through a lot of pain, haven't you? Post-surgical pain, depression, all of these things that happen. Questioning, will I survive it? What happens next? Yes, and now you're 4 months down. And you think, well, I got it all taken care of. The doctor took care of me. I had a bypass. I'm okay. I have a long life to look forward to. Wrong. At 18 months, 46% of these grafted vessels, these bypass vessels, will have failed. This is national statistics in America, and they're probably the same here in Australia. Let me say it again. Within less than 2 years, about almost 50% of these bypasses will no longer function. And you've just spent, well, of course, you don't pay anything here for your bypasses, do you? It's all free here. Australia's a great country, right? It's all free. Once you had a bypass, you have to be on a very strict, religiously obedient lifestyle that centers on no smoking, daily exercise, move forward towards 10,000 steps, and an absolutely cholesterol-free diet. It has to be a diet that's absolutely low on saturated fats. Because the saturated fats are the ones that drive the liver to produce the excess amount of cholesterol, which gets into the bloodstream, into the vessels, and drives the heart disease. So we need to do something about foods that have cholesterol and saturated fats. What are these foods? Anybody? What foods have cholesterol? Only animal products. Give me some animal products. Meats, chicken, fish, sausages, eggs, constant source of cholesterol, egg yolks. How about cheese? How about milk? Yes, dairy products. This is where the cholesterol comes from. But even more important, you have to worry about the saturated fats. Where do they come from? They drive the liver to produce extra amount of cholesterol. That's the real dangerous one. Where does the saturated fat come from? Almost all found in animal products again. Cheese, sausages, fish. Are you surprised? Yeah. White meat, yeah. Red meat. You don't want to eat chickens once you know how these chickens are grown. They never see the sun. They never scratch the soil. They're just machines. They live for 3, 4, 5 months to the extent that they're force-fed and their femurs, their bones break under the load, and then they're gone. Folks, what about ethics? Is this how we are supposed to take care of nature entrusted to us by God? You are the steward of my creation. In America, we slaughter 1 million animals every hour so they become part of our system, and our stomachs become the graveyard of these creatures. Hello? Have you thought about that? They're sentient animals. They have sensibility, they have fear, they have emotions. And then drugs. Well, if you have heart disease, the surgeon will take care of it. We can do a bypass. We can do some angioplasty. Now you look at medication. Oh, my cholesterol is too high. The doctor gives you a prescription for, what's the medication? A statin drug, right? Here's an editorial from the famous, large, well-known, respected medical journal of the American Medical Association. The editor writes, "We have underestimated the risk of statin drugs approaching 20% of patients at risk for muscle aches and pains and at risk for diabetes and memory loss." You know what that means? When you take these drugs, beware. It could promote diabetes and it could promote memory loss. That's what it says here. What is the benefit-risk ratio? And then she says, if we take 100 men, and they haven't had a heart attack yet, and we give them these drugs for 5 years, costs us about $500,000 US, we can expect to prevent 1 to 2 heart attacks. Hello? You spend $500,000 to prevent 1 or 2 heart attacks, and these people have to take these drugs for 5 years? We can do this easily with a CHIP program in a few months. In a year's time, we save these. As a matter of fact, we can reduce the cholesterol in high cholesterol people by 20%, and that means when you lower the cholesterol by 20%, we can cut the risk of a heart attack in half in 30 days. Let me say it again. When you lower the cholesterol with diet by 20%, you can lower the risk of a heart attack by 50%. It's 2.5 times the amount that you reduce the cholesterol. 30 days. Not 5 years, not $500,000. We're drowning in advertisements. I mean, I don't know what you do here. I haven't had a chance to watch television here. But in America, I mean, first they advertise all the junk foods, and then they advertise all the medications. I mean, and then they tell you the latest medication, and they give you all the side effects. Drrr, 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 and death. And you sit there, you say, brother, bring it on. It's not going to happen to me. It happens to him, not to me. Come on. And you see a doctor and say, I saw this on television. I want these drugs. And the doctor says, well, I haven't really seen anything about this. I haven't seen any scientific reports on this. But you don't want to not be, helpful to the patient. You want to treat the patient what they want. And so you give a medication even though you don't even know what it is. Sometimes we're in this quandary where we have to act against better knowledge. It's a very uncomfortable situation. Please note, prescription drugs are the number 3 cause of death in America. We're not talking about heroin. That's a minor item. We're talking about prescription drugs. 11% of all American deaths are due to prescription drugs. Either they were not taken correctly or there were side effects that we didn't understand. Folks, if you are 60 years and older, please remember, whenever you take more than 4 medications, no physician, no pharmacist can tell you the potential interaction of these drugs and what they do to you. Did you hear me? I'm not against medication. I'm just saying there has to be the second line of defense. First line of defense would be, what can I do to put myself into alignment with nature? Now, I like this young lady here. We're all blind, right? Would you stand, please? Yeah. And you can form an alliance with this gentleman that's sitting next to you. He seems to be knowledgeable about medicine, right? Right? Okay, so we're all blind, but you're the only one that has eyes. And can you tell us what you see? Don't interpret it. Just say, I see people in green, and they're doing what? They're mopping up the mess. What do you mean mess?
Water mess.
Oh, so there's water where? Okay, so I see water on the floor, and there are people desperately trying to keep the mopping up, right? They have some pretty big mops there. They have all kinds of different mops. They're all mopping up there, and they're passing out umbrellas. Oh, they're trying to keep the patient dry. What's wrong with the picture?
They should fix the pipe.
Ah, yeah, they should fix the pipe, right? What is needed here? Thank you very much. Super job. Now, if you interpret this, this is the medical profession. We have new mops. We have electronic mops. We have big degrees on the wall. We are official moppers. And we're being paid very well for mopping up. We're passing out umbrellas, medications. They don't really solve the problem. The problem is you need to have a plumber. And you are the plumber. And you work with your physician that is enlightened, and he's working with you, right? I mean, that's what we need to do. But people just want to have umbrellas. Just give me an umbrella, and I'll be fine. No, we've got to do something about the leaking pipes. It's a very expensive procedure when you pass out umbrellas, and you're just mopping up 24/7. Please note, in 1960 in America, we paid 5% of our income on medical care. This year, it will be 20% of our income will be spending on medical care. And in the last 2 years, the American lifespan has declined. People live shorter lives this year and last year than 3 years ago. We're paying twice as much money as the Canadians pay for medical care, and the Canadians live longer than we do. What that means is that you cannot buy health. Health is usually a solid achievement, especially when it comes to these chronic diseases. And please, the most important aspect of this tape here, of this video, of this slide, is the fact that of all the medical spending in America, 86% of our national healthcare budget, medical care budget, is spent on treating symptoms, passing out umbrellas, of chronic disease without curing them. Can you let that sink in? 86% of all the money we spend on medical care is spent on taking care of symptoms, making you feel better, passing out umbrellas without really curing the problem. We're not taking care of the leaking pipes. That requires education. That requires inspiration. That requires motivation. That requires a group phenomenon where you're working with other people because you cannot do it alone. When CHIP comes into a town, I always tell our CHIP facilitators, make sure you work with the restaurants, make sure you work with the food suppliers, get healthy foods on the shelves, provide at least 5 healthy meals in the restaurant, and they give them a big decal that says CHIP approved. And these restaurants love it because they know that one of the 5 meals probably is a small amount of chicken, healthy chicken. Another dish probably that we recommend is some fish, some healthy fish, small amounts. And then the other 3 are all plant-based, healthy dishes. And why do we recommend to leave in some fish and some chicken? Because not everyone is ready for it. See? And you have some chippers, they bring their friends in, and they wouldn't be very comfortable in having these vegan things. I mean, and so you say, well, this is sort of a healthy kind of a chicken dish, and that's an introduction. And so the people begin to realize that you are not a fanatic. Folks, the greatest harm done to this movement is people that are fanatics. They are black and white, and they check everything out, and immediately they judge you. I had this fellow, he was a minister, and before he became a minister, he was a nurse, and he was a CHIP leader in Wichita, and we had about 1,000 people enrolled in this church program. He was highly thought of, and then he was seen in the store, and he had just put some things that were kind of questionable, illegal, right? And just as he had put these kind of illegal things into his trolley, a CHIP person comes around the corner and sees the pastor, the leader of the CHIP movement, and he is so shocked. He grabs the nearest cans that he can find and dumps them all on top of the trolley there, and so that he covers up what he has put in his trolley. And then the CHIP person says, "Oh, Pastor, let me see, what do you have in your trolley?" And when he had grabbed all those cans that would cover up what he had wasn't supposed to be seen, he didn't see the fact that what he had put into the trolley, all the cans that he grabbed was pork and beans. and the chipper said, "You mean, Pastor, you eat pork and beans?" He was trapped. See, chippers are always the nicest people. You should not allow anyone to become a CHIP leader, a health leader in your church, unless they're kind, loving people. We are not jackhammers. No, we are loving people. We are on the journey. So that person is still at the flesh pots of Egypt. Pray for him. The Spirit will lead us as we lovingly move forward. We're like cotton balls, gently blowing the message of health to others that are not quite there yet. And the best way to do that is by being an example. Is that right? I know you were all watching me, whether I would take some of these delicacies today. I did. I wanted you to know that I'm not a fanatic. And besides, I enjoy them. No, I had one of these small ones. I think it must have been some kind of a tofu mocha kind of a, it was lovely. I mean, I told my wife, I said, "Get me another one. I don't want them to see that I'm getting 2 servings." They were wonderful. I mean, let us be kind and loving as we're moving to the city above. Are you with me there? There's no room for fanatics. There's no room for black and white people. We need to be loving people, and we need to make allowances for people that are on the journey with us. This is what happened here, the dietary trends. The changes took place in the 1970s when we developed the fast food industry. And this is what happens. This is a food supply here. This is what we perhaps could find in a poor farmer in Mexico. What does the farmer in Mexico eat? Corn. Corn is starch, right? What else do they eat? Beans, that's starch, right? 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 What else? Potatoes, that's starch, right? What else? Potatoes, that's starch, right? They have an occasional chicken. So basically, the diet composition of a poor farmer in Mexico is mostly starch, the green color, some protein. There's always protein there in these foods, and there's some sugar there, and there's some fat there, right? When you eat corn, you get your corn oil, right? So now, the farmer now decides that he moves to the big city, and he sends the money home to his family, and ultimately they join him. And guess what? After about a few months, he is now eating with the big boys in Mexico City, and he's no longer eating at home. He's no longer eating slow food. He's eating fast food. What do you think he has? Hamburgers, potato chips, M&Ms, some alcohol, all these kind of things that we usually kind of associate with the Western diet, fast foods. High taste. And this is then the diet composition. Please note, the diet now has totally changed from this year. The fat content is very low here. Now it's about 40% fat. The sugar has gone from about 2 or 3% to 20% sugar. And the protein has increased because now he's eating more animal products, that are heavy. Quite a bit of animal protein in them. And please note the starch. Do you see the starch here? This is starch here. This is starch here. What's the difference? One is high starch. The other one is low starch. This starch is totally different from this starch. This starch comes out of the hand of the master designer. I told you it was corn, potatoes. It has fiber. It has nutrients. It's slowly digested by the body. It doesn't turn into sugar just like this. It takes 1, 2, 3 hours. The body can handle that very nicely, even with diabetes. However, when you have this kind of a starch here, this is refined starch. This is white flour starch. This is the kind of flour that you find in pizza crusts, and in pies, and in cakes, and in these cookies. This is the different kind of starch. That starch turns within 10, 15, 20 minutes into sugar, and you are in trouble because your blood sugar rises. This is different because here you have fiber, here you have no fiber whatsoever because you removed it. You've gone from brown rice to white rice where you have removed the nutrient value and the fiber value. So when people talk about carbohydrates diet, always ask, what kind of carbohydrates? Because they're totally different. God's carbohydrates are ideal foods because they have all the fiber to protect the carbohydrate from being consumed and turn over too fast. And they're rich in nutritional value. So be aware of this. Don't fall into the traps that you hear sometimes. So just to unpack it here, this is the amount of sugar that most people eat, 30 teaspoons a day. These are Pringles. You have 1,000 calories in one of these tubes. You could have eaten 10 potatoes. That's the same number of calories. These Pringles here, you can eat 1,000 calories in 10 minutes. These 1,000 calories in potatoes, you need probably 10 days for, right? God is in the packaging business. God knew how to package it so you don't overeat. And you say, well, I don't like these potatoes. They have no taste. I understand. How about opening them up and putting some lentil soup of yesterday in the potato? Would that work for you? Would that flavor it up? Would that make it moist? Would lentil soup help you to make it more attractive the way you like it? Or put some salsa in, the Mexican style? You don't need to put it. What do most people put into these big potatoes? Butter, cheese, sour cream, bacon chips. Only God knows what we hide in these potatoes. And then the kids are coming home from college, and now you have a caloric bomb of 500 calories. And you say, well, potatoes are fattening. It's not the potato. It's the overhead. Now, another point. Here's a book that came out about 2 or 3 years ago, Salt, Sugar, and Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us. An outstanding book I recommend to everyone. You need to read this book. It is one of the finest books and a very disturbing books. This is meticulously researched, and it tells a chilling story of how processed food industries are making a fortune, a killing, by slowly poisoning an unwitting population. Many of these large corporations are owned by the tobacco industry. They diversified from smoking to junk food. And the first thing they did is they hired one of the largest, best brain research companies and said, tell us, how much salt do we need to put into a product so it becomes addictive? Would you eat the Pringles if they wouldn't have the salt? Would you eat the Pringles if they wouldn't have that crispy, fatty kind of a consistency? They said, put enough sugar in. Put enough fat in. Have you ever wondered why you cannot just be satisfied with one M&M? Oh, I don't mean a bag. I just mean one M&M. Could you? Have you ever wondered why you couldn't just be satisfied with one potato chip? You have no peace until the thing is empty. Isn't that right? And then you have these Oreos. You have those Oreos here too in Australia? Kind of brown and then there's some white stuff. Oh, you know those things here, huh? Yeah. What do they cost here? Do you know? How do you know all of these things here? See, it's part of the culture. These are addictive foods. If you would give a rat or rats a choice in choosing between heroin or sugar, they will choose the sugar. We've underestimated the power of sugar as an addictive substance. They actually hijack the brain chemistry because there's a pleasure center in the brain, and within less than 1 second of being on your lips, it is hitting your brain pleasure center, and you're a goner, and you reach out for the next one, and the next one, and the next one. I had a pastor tell me one time, you should really tell the people to pray for power, victory in Jesus. I said, I don't believe in this. He was shocked. I said, Pastor, it's the wrong time to pray. You need to tell the people, pray when you go into the supermarket and put it into the trolley. Then you need to pray. So it doesn't get into the trolley, because once it's in the trolley, it goes home, and once it's at home, you are gone, or you have no control anymore. All the prayers in the world will not take care of you. Right? This American diet, about half of the calories are having no nutritional value. We are overfed and undernourished. And then listen, here's the second big change that took place in the diet of America that's spread around the world. We have doubled our consumption of animal products. So cholesterol numbers are high. Triglyceride numbers are high. Imagine the average American eats 12 cows in a lifetime, plus 25 hogs and 2,400 chickens. I mean, that's pure cholesterol, that's pure saturated fat. And then they say, well, how come we have heart disease? How come I have to have a bypass? How come? How come I'm gaining weight? How come I have arthritis? How come I have diabetes? Here you see sirloin steak is 75% fat. The World Health Organization says that these sausages, bacon, and these kind of processed foods, they're directly associated with cancer. We have mathematical formulas that tell you exactly how much of these products you eat and how much likelihood you have of cancer. They say just like smoking causes cancer in every second smoker, so these products, processed meat products, are directly associated. They cause colon cancer and rectal cancer. And then it comes to cheese. Look what happened to cheese in 1970. All of a sudden, we're now consuming lots and lots of cheese. It used to be about 2 kilos. Now it's more like 15 kgs. Why? What happened in 1970? What happened in 1980? Help me. Help me. What happened? How come we eat so much cheese now? How? Tell me. What is it? Fridge? Oh, I see. How about cheeseburgers? How about macaroni and cheese? How about they're developing new cheese products every day because they don't know what to do with all the cheese, because people don't want to drink whole milk anymore, so they take the fat out and they put it into cheese and other people eat the cheese. Saturated fat. The worst thing that you can put into your system to drive cholesterol. Please note here, in the American diet, the number one source of saturated fat is cheese. That's driving heart disease more than anything else because of the large amount that we consume. This is the American diet. This is the Australian diet. It's probably worse here. 50% of the calories have no nutritional value, or they're at least they are commercialized products. They are refined processed foods. About 35% is animal products. And this is the lesson I want you to take home. Only 14% of the calories we eat in America, and probably here too, only 14% come out of foods that God made. 14%. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, with some nuts and avocados. These are God's foods. This is also God's prescription for a longer and healthier life and a reduction in your food cost per month. It's estimated that 80% of chronic disease and premature death could be prevented by making significant changes in diet and lifestyle. And I want to now show you, to really bring my point home, I want to contrast the package, the guidelines, the dietary guidelines, the healthy dietary lifestyle guidelines that were entrusted to us by a simple Battle Creek housewife with a grade 3 education who had a vision in 1863. I will contrast that with this article that came out 2 years ago in the American Medical Association Journal. And this is a major study that looked at the disease rate of heart disease and stroke and diabetes. And they said 48%, just about half of all the deaths from cardiovascular disease and diabetes could be avoided if people did what? Number one, increase fruits by how much? 3 times. Increase vegetables and legumes by 2+ times. Eat twice as many nuts and seeds, within reason. And then increase whole grains by how much? 6 times. We no longer eat whole grains. Our grains are whole, just about all of them, refined white flour products. We need to move back to barley and oats and whole wheat and these kind of foods. Oats, whole foods. They recommend 6 times we should eat more of these whole grains. We should consume about 125 grams a day. This is a scientific study. And they said at the same time, reduce your meat by 3 times or more. You should not have more than 14 grams of meat a day. Do you know how much 14 grams of meat is? It's sort of like a large pebble. That's it. It's not worth it. We tell our chip people, tell the people to put first into the center, not the meat and the fish and the chicken. No, in the center you put the potato, the sweet potato, you put the brown rice, or you put the vegetables. These are the kind of things you put in the center, and the meat goes on the edge. Right? That's what we should do. And if it rolls over the edge, it's even better for you. So, processed meats, these are processed meats, sausages 0, because of the cancer rate danger. Sugary beverages 0, sodium cut it in half because of hypertension. So in the last 7 minutes, I want to show you what you can do when you change your diet and you put something else between your lips. This is a big study from Dr. Ornish. He took 48 heart disease patients and half of them he put on a vegetarian diet, a strict vegetarian diet, no refined foods, and this was very, very low in fat, very low-fat vegetarian diet. And then the other group of people, the control group, they were placed on what we call the American Heart Association diet. They were given 30% fat. And, cut back on your meats, cut back on your eggs. Don't have 10 eggs a week, only have 6 eggs a week. It's not going to do it. And here's the results. After 1 year, Dr. Ornish found that 82% of these patients with heart disease had a reopening of their coronary arteries. They had a diminishment of the plaque that was crowding out the space that they needed. And then when they looked at the control group, people on the American Heart Association, they found 53% of these patients had a worsening of the heart disease. There he is on Newsweek, a personal friend of mine. He's very, very clear that you can save your heart by making changes. Here's Dr. Asselstein. He's very, very clear. He took the Walking Dead, 6 months to live, and then 20 years later, all of these people are still alive except for 3 who have died on different causes. He's using a plant-based, very low-fat, whole foods diet that comes out of the hand of the master designer. He's an atheist, but based on science, he said, we want you to eat more fruits, more vegetables, more whole grains, more legumes. Cut back on fats, oils and grease, cut back on salt and sugar. And here you see the coronary arteries. This artery is very, very narrowed down. It's bringing very little oxygenated blood to the heart muscle. This person has angina. This person here, this is the same person 2.5 years later, the same artery, no medication, no medical intervention, just fruits, vegetables, whole grains. And he shows that the artery has been totally restored. Let me show you just a few more.
How do you lose so much weight? What kind
Lights
of diet
off.
are you on?
Well, the short answer is I went on essentially a plant-based diet. I live on beans, legumes, vegetables, fruit, no dairy, and it changed my whole metabolism, and I lost 24 pounds, and I got back to basically what I weighed in high school. But I did it for a different reason. I wanted to lose a little weight, but I didn't dream this would happen. I did it because after I had this stent put in, I realized that even though it happens quite often that after you have bypasses, you lose the veins because they're thinner and weaker than arteries. The truth is that it clogged up, which means that the cholesterol was still causing buildup in my vein that was part of my bypass. And thank God I could take the stents. I don't want it to happen again. So I did all this research, and I saw that 82% of the people since 1986 who have gone on a plant-based, no dairy, no meat of any kind, no chicken, turkey. If you can do it, 82% of the people who've done that have begun to heal themselves. Their arterial blockage cleans up. The calcium deposit around their heart breaks up. This movement has been led by a doctor named Caldwell Esselstyn at the Cleveland Clinic, Dean Ornish, whom you know, out in California, the doctors Campbell, father and son, who wrote the China study, and a handful of others. But we now have 25 years of evidence. And so I thought, well, since I need to lose a little weight for Chelsea's wedding, I'll become part of this experiment. I'll see if I can be one of those that can have a self-clearing mechanism.
Did you hear that word? A self-clearing mechanism. But we recognize that the body is in a default position. The body always wants to heal itself if you put the right system into place, the right foods into the body. The body wants to heal itself. Give the body a chance. Diabetes, 80 patients on insulin, on a very simple food. 50 of these diabetic patients are off insulin, and they're no longer diabetics within 6 weeks. 50 out of 80. Professor Anderson, 50% of these diabetics on insulin could be off these medications within weeks, and 80% of these could be that are on pills, could normalize their blood sugars and be off medication again if they change their diet. What's the diet like? The diet that we recommend is a food that is very simple in fats? No. A diet that is high in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. So let me just tell you what we recommend. This is a Harvard program. Harvard University recommends more vegetables, more fruits, more whole grains, and healthy protein, which means beans and maybe some meat, and no milk. They recommend water is the best way to go. This is what we recommend. This is God's diet. This comes out of the hand of the master designer. CHIP. Here you see in our CHIP program, within 8 to 10, 12 weeks, people lose 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 pounds, which is about 7 to 8 kgs without ever trying to stop eating. They're eating more than they've ever eaten in their life. They will tell you this, but they eat the right foods with lots of fiber. They feel full, they feel satisfied, and they don't gain weight. They lose on the average, if they have to lose weight, 7 to 8 kgs. The most difficult patients that we have are patients that are lean, and we want to fatten them up. It's very difficult to do because you have to really cut back on vegetables and these kind of things and salads because they don't have enough calories. So these are the changes in cholesterol. 20% drop in cholesterol in just 30 days. Triglycerides, high triglycerides, 44% triglycerides coming down in 30 days. Please note, this is now this is diabetes. We have 525 diabetics. Dr. Paul Rankin did the work and published in the American Journal of Cardiology. 525 diabetics come into the program. After 30 days, there are only 301 diabetics. What happened to the 224 diabetics? What happened to them? Did they all die? No, they're no longer diabetics. And then it comes here to high blood pressure. Again, we have patients with high blood pressure over 100 in the diastolic. We have 210 patients hypertensive. Within 30 days, they're only 69. What happens to these others? Their blood pressures have normalized themselves. This is what CHIP does for you. Here's Dr. Morton. He says, these clinical results of a large 5,000-some people in North America have shown the most important clinical changes ever recorded in the literature. And how did we do it? We did it by working with people in churches, volunteers. A marvelous way to keep costs down and to help people to become the best people possible. Take a look at this last video, and then we call it quits. Thank you.
I didn't realize how much my daily routine had become harmful to my health. I knew my lifestyle demanded hard work. And with all the crazy hours I worked, I was constantly eating on the run. My lifestyle slowly took a toll in December of 2004 when I was taken to the hospital.
Verna, you have cardiomyopathy. It's a deterioration of the heart muscle. We had to remove 21 pounds of fluid from around your heart. And currently, you only have about 1/6 of your heart functioning. Verna, it's time to put your affairs in order. You don't have long to live. You may only have up to a year.
Well, Verna, we got your chest x-rays back. Looks like we're going to need to start you on some oxygen at night, about 4 liters.
I found myself really sick. I got worse from day to day. I knew I was dying as I could feel the life ebbing out of me. I began making my funeral plans. I wrote love letters to my 6 children, my grandchildren, and my friends. The morning shower would leave me too exhausted to do much else. I would sleep away most days. I was desperate. I slept more than I was awake. I was putting on weight, and I was concerned about having a stroke. I just felt that there was no hope for me.
Well, I clearly remember the day I met Verna. She was distraught and discouraged regarding her health issues, and she was teary with frustration. She had shortness of breath, chest pain. She was 100 pounds overweight, was on 7 medications, oxygen at night, had sleep apnea, and clearly felt that she was dying and was desperate. I reviewed her chart carefully, and after speaking with her a bit, realized that we had some options. Despite her frustration, she was clearly motivated to live and live well. And I knew that her best and only chance for success was CHIP. CHIP is the Coronary Health Improvement Project.
As I relate to my patients over the years, I am so impressed that most people do not realize the power they have to create their own health. Power to prevent and arrest and even reverse disease. I also note in most people it is never too late. The CHIP program motivates and educates people to make better day-to-day decisions about their lifestyle, what they eat and drink, how they exercise, and how they manage stress. We need to eat more foods as grown, fruits and vegetables, whole grains and beans. Over 50,000 graduates worldwide have lowered their blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, and lost weight. They have overcome heartburn and chest pain and depression. They have even reduced and eliminated many medications. CHIP graduates discover they have the power to preserve and renew their health.
When Verna arrived at my office 3 months later, she had graduated from the CHIP program. She arrived 35 pounds lighter, carrying a box of fruits and vegetables and crying tears of joy this time. She was clearly following CHIP, and she was exercising every day with no symptoms. At that point, we were able to start decreasing her medications.
I'm not dead. I'm very much alive. I'm almost 70 years old, and I lost 85 pounds. I just came back from a 50-mile bike ride. This last summer, I went 1,400 miles on my bike, and CHIP has given me my life back again. And I have so much energy, I just don't know what to do with it all.
Democratic leaders tell us the president plans to talk healthcare while he's in Green Bay. Sarah Thompson joins us with more on one woman's personal story the president will likely hear.
The White House is still finalizing a lot of plans for Thursday, including who, besides the president, will be speaking and who will introduce the president himself. What we do know is the White House has sought out local citizens to share their personal stories about their health. And one Appleton woman has a remarkable story she is ready to tell the president.
And I'll be speaking.
Verna Van Newland is a new woman.
Before, I didn't want to live because I was too sick. And now I feel fabulous.
The old Verna ran a flower shop, working 5 to 7 weddings every weekend. But 30 years of stress and poor eating finally caught up with her heart.
They found out I had cardiomyopathy with only 1/6 of my heart working. I took off 21 pounds of fluid from around my heart.
4.5 years ago, 2 cardiologists gave Verna less than a year to live.
And I knew I was dying, so I planned my funeral.
Her health and medical bills forced her to close her business.
I gave it up when I got so sick because I wasn't able to do it anymore. Financially, I lost everything that I worked 30 years for because I didn't have health insurance.
Then she says she experienced a miracle. She learned about CHIP, the Coronary Heart Improvement Program at ThedaCare in Appleton. The program makes serious lifestyle adjustments with healthy eating and exercise.
Between July 4th of last year and Thanksgiving, I rode almost 1,400 miles on my bike.
Doctors say Verna's heart is now fully functional. She shares her story to offer insight into the nation's healthcare system, inspire others, and offer hope.
All right, thank you, Dr. Diehl. That was fantastic. Amen? Amen. Is that loud enough? Louder? Amen? Amen. All right, we have a 20-minute break only, but go out in the sunshine, stretch your legs, bathroom, whatever you need to do. We have another meeting back in here in 20 minutes' time, so we look forward to seeing you back. It's the last one. Are you okay? Doing all right? We're going to look after him, all right? And also we have the piano concert at 6 o'clock today, and Lily will be sharing her beautiful gift with us, so we'd like you to come and join that. And a little light snack in between that, so you can come and join that too. So enjoy.